Yolimar Contreras lives in a poor barrio on the hillsides of Caracas with her husband and her young son in this 2-room cinder block home. She's lived here for 7 years. They used to have running water, at least fairly often, but not anymore.
We haven't had water for 3 to 4 months because we're high up on the hillside.
It hasn't stopped her from washing the floors, but now, in order to get water, they have to carry it up, one 23-liter jug at a time. She's not alone. Water is out across major portions of the neighborhood.
All week long you see people carrying water by here, Saturdays and Sundays in particular, when people are off from work.
Here's the problem. The pump needed to push the water up the hill and into their home, well, it's broken. And U.S. sanctions are blocking the country from acquiring new pumps, motors, pipes, and replacement parts. In Venezuela, they call it the blockade, and that's exactly what it feels like. According to many residents, the Venezuelan government is doing what it can to mitigate the situation. Twice a week, it sends a tanker of potable water to the neighborhood, down the hill from Yolimar's home. Some residents here say they've been without running water for a year and a half. They pour into the streets with their waist-high buckets to wait their turn for their containers to be filled.
There's a pump that's broken and they are working on fixing it. The vice minister came yesterday and she said they are working on it. You need to have 3 pumps and only 2 are working. So because of a lack of pressure, the water isn't getting here.
The residents say they've always had issues with water, but it's never been this bad. Across town, on the opposite end of Caracas, sections of Petare, the city's largest poor barrio, are also facing the same reality. Hundreds of thousands of homes are out of water. This is one of the pumping stations that should be pushing the water up to many of them, but it's missing most of its pumps. There's only enough water pressure to fill up the trucks outside.
Debido al bloqueo económico internacional que nos tienen los Estados Unidos y la mediática internacional de este país.
Because of the international economic blockade the United States has imposed on Venezuela, it's been impossible to buy the pumps because of the Venezuelan government has tried to send the funds twice in order to acquire the pumps, since we don't have them here because of the blockade. And it has never worked because they have blocked the companies and the countries that have been trying to help us.
President Donald Trump intensified sanctions on Venezuela in August 2017. According to Venezuela, the U.S. government has frozen $5.5 billion of Venezuelan funds in international accounts in at least 50 banks and financial institutions. Even if Venezuela could get the money abroad, the U.S. has threatened to sanction foreign companies for doing business with the country. This is not an isolated reality. According to officials at the state water company Hidroven, as much as 15 to 20% of the country is facing water shortages due to U.S. sanctions. We're talking about millions of Venezuelans without potable running water because of the U.S. government. Maria Flores is the vice president of operations at Hidrocapital, the Venezuelan state water company for the capital, Caracas.
Nosotros hemos tenido situaciones donde ya tenemos las bombas y los motores. Están a punto de embarcar.
With the blockade, we have had situations where we have the pumps and the motors, and they are about to ship, and then comes the all-powerful hand of the United States, and they block the money in the bank or sanction the company that is working with us just for selling this equipment. What they don't see is that they are affecting people's lives. It's not Chavez, it's not Maduro, it's the Venezuelan people that are waiting to have access to water.
Es al pueblo venezolano que está a la espera de poder acceder a eso. Entonces ha sido bastante duro.
They've come up with short-term solutions to the long-term problems. They've installed cisterns for homes in many communities that have been without water for longer, like this neighborhood in Petare. See those plastic blue tanks? Here, the water trucks can fill up the water tanks of each home directly, even when they're without running water. But the blockade and the lack of parts for vehicles is also impacting the number of water trucks Hidrocapital can keep on the road. Maria Flores says their fleet has been reduced by 75% over the last 3 years.
We had a fleet of 20 water trucks a few years ago. Now we have 4 or 5. It has all been reduced because of the blockade.
Most nights of the week, Maria Flores and her team are holding meetings with communities across the city, trying to resolve the lack of access to water for low-income communities, which are facing the most severe shortages. Many of these meetings are not easy. Residents are upset. Water is not something you can do without. But Maria Flores and her team know the importance of their relationship with the community. Water working groups in poor neighborhoods around the country were key in helping the government to bring direct access to potable water to 96% of the country's homes, up from 80% 20 years ago before President Hugo Chavez was elected. But they're fighting an uphill battle. Hidroven says that most water storage facilities around the country are working at 50 to 60% capacity. Over the last 3 years, the influx of water into Caracas has been reduced by nearly 30% because of failing pipes and pumps and the inability to maintain the system because they need equipment from abroad. Equipment they just can't get because of the Trump-imposed U.S. sanctions. And this is the clear goal of the U.S. government: tighten the grip and make the Venezuelan people suffer with the hope that they'll get fed up and rise up. The Trump administration would have you believe that the blame lies on Venezuelan incompetence, but many Venezuelans are just not buying it.
Bueno, no, acá no es de echarle la culpa a Maduro porque de verdad no. Y bueno, los Estados Unidos, mi conocimiento que está Donald Trump, lo que tenemos conocimiento es malo.
You can't blame the Maduro government, but as for the United States, this Donald Trump is mean. He's mean and he's blocked a lot of things. We have to support each other, and this U.S. blockade has to end.